Everybody, welcome back to Miles and Mentors. We've had him on the show before, and I see his stuff on social media all the time, and he's got some really good stuff. One in particular that came across my feed recently that I knew I had to talk a little bit more and a little bit more in depth with him about this topic. So we've got Rob Carpenter from Truck Safe back on today, and we're going to dive in and pick a little bit more that lived and learned knowledge that he's gained through the years in the industry. So stick with us. We have a great episode right after this on Miles and Mentors.
Welcome to Miles and Mentors, the podcast that humanizes trucking, getting real life advice and insights from logistics professionals from all over the industry. We sit down with those seasoned mentors who have put in the miles with a mission to pass on the knowledge gained from years in the industry to you. Now buckle up and enjoy the show.
Hey, what's going on, Rob? Thanks so much for being here, man.
Not a whole lot. How you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good, man. You were one of the early guests on the show. Now we got you back around, so I feel like we've done the icebreaker stuff, but we got to do some catching up as well. What's been going on in your life since we had you around last time, man?
Oh man, that's like a year ago. I mean, we've got like
Wow.
everything in the world's happened. I mean, we've like changed 25 million regulations and
Yeah,
had a million more crashes and all kinds of stuff has happened since then. So
I was mentioning the intro there. Your feed is fantastic. It comes across on all the different platforms all the time, and it always catches me enough that I end up clicking on it, end up looking into the videos you're looking at, the stories you're talking about. So I really appreciate you bringing that stuff to light, man, because you really do shine a really good spotlight on that side of the industry and make people think about safety and regulations. And there's some crazy stuff happening on the roads out there, man.
it's some funny stuff out there for sure. And I don't know. I think I wake up sometimes and I see a video, and I mean, like the Chuck E. Cheese one the other day, and
Yeah.
it's like this is a really good video, but it really went to, hey, Chuck E. Cheese got arrested, but it's like this totally applies to trucking. I mean, kind of does, kind of doesn't. I mean, you can kind of mold it how you want to mold it, but that's where I went with it. So
Yeah, this is one that I particularly saw come across your feed not too long ago. I think it was just last week or a couple weeks
yeah,
ago that you posted this, and it was in video form. I just pulled up some pictures here, but it stops and grabs your attention, right? Because the cops are walking into the Chuck E. Cheese, all these kids are staring, and mask on and everything. Guys getting handcuffs thrown on them and hauled out, and these kids are looking at them like Santa Claus is getting pulled away.
yeah, we're not even taking you outside, man. We're doing this right here, and
Exactly.
I don't know. Sometimes you see this stuff, and it's like, I know how I can apply this to trucking, and it's funny because like, trucking is so broad in terms of like from even if you don't look at regs, I mean, just the modes of operation and how all of them are so different, whether it's bus or passenger or property or whatever.
Yeah.
Open deck. I mean, it's so many things that so many things apply to. And then you see things from the reg perspective, and it's like you got all the basics of unsafe driving and driver fitness and maintenance, and it's like almost any video you find, you can find a way to tie it to trucking. So
Oh, 100%, 100%. One thing I'd like to tap into you here with, because you've got this mind for regulation, the industry. I don't know where you're at with hiring, but I want to touch in on that because the first thing that comes to mind here is kind of that employee risk. Our demographic that, tunes into our show, those company drivers going out on their own to be owner operators, but then growing that fleet. And growing that fleet can be scary, right? Because then instead of it just being you, you've got to put your trust and the trust of your company into others and hope that they know these regulations, that they follow these regulations, but also just so you got a decent person behind you, because then that, falls back on you, poorly represents your company, etc. And this is, a really shining point of it, seeing the mascot of your, store, your whole institution here getting hauled out in front of your prized clientele. I mean, yeah, you can easily relate that back to trucking, especially with all the other videos you see of, just poor safety and regulations practiced throughout the industry. What are your thoughts on that? As you're growing a fleet and you're hiring on guys, what are those major concerns in your mind around, this liability issue?
I mean, it's broad, right? Because you got to look at it from a couple different ways. One, it's your reputation. So who you hire is important from keeping a customer standpoint and public perception. But I mean, one of the problems that I had when I went from truck driver to fleet manager to fleet owner was trying to bring on drivers that would actually work, for one thing, and then two, that would keep my reputation intact. And I think one of the first people I hired, he is the son of a dump truck company owner, and I'm thinking, well, this guy, Mr. Sears, is a great guy, like totally reputable, good character, old school trucking guy. And I'm sure he instilled some of these things in his son. And I hired his son, and I mean, you could have left $1 million in the truck seat until 8 a.m. and he still wouldn't have been there till 8:15. I mean, and that has an effect on how you look as a company, because it wasn't 2 days into his employment that I started getting calls from employers like, "Hey, you missed my load. Hey, why is he not here yet?" So, a big part of that is the reputation factor on the front end, but then you've got the litigation factor. So, if that guy comes in late, he gets stuck in traffic, gets high pressure in a rush, and causes a crash, and now you've got litigation to deal with.
Yeah.
And then you've got violations and crash data to deal with. So it can affect you all the way around the horn. It's just how deeply it's going to affect you based on how you kind of develop your systems and your programs and everything else. But hiring the right people is probably one of who you hire and what vehicles you purchase, spec, and put on the road are probably the two biggest things that's going to determine whether you're going to succeed or fail.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, kind of like you mentioned, this is one of those things that can definitely relate to trucking. It can relate to any aspect of business out there. I mean, when you're putting your faith in people to represent you, your brand, and hold themselves accountable, there's always going to be that risk factor. And not trucking related. In a past life, I used to own a low voltage company doing construction stuff, and that's where I got my first taste of you need to be careful who you hire. I'd never hired on anyone before. I went from working for a company to being a contractor for them to then that company kind of going somewhere. So then I was like, all right, fine, I'm on my own. And I did that for a bit. And then one of the bigger contractors I was subbing under for several different jobs, they recommended somebody to me, and I was blindly never hired anybody before. But this was a fairly large job, and I had two going on, so I was focused on this one. And essentially, long story short, I had about 17,000 in materials for this low voltage job, cameras, wire, everything. Just kind of trusted, didn't have contracts in place, nothing. You look back hindsight, it's like, what the hell were you thinking? I had no, I have no business running that business in the first place. I knew so little, but trusted these guys to go get it. They went and got it. They never went to the job, never came back around, and I was responsible for all that material. It ended up putting me out of business. But it goes to show, man, I mean, there's a lot that can happen there if you don't do that proper vetting and, don't stay on top of it. There's a lot of risk behind
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I had same guy, and he this was maybe a weekend. We couldn't send him back that customer, so I put him on a tobacco load out of North Carolina, coming to Virginia. It was in a port container, so it came into the country as a import. He picked it up, and he was late, like we talked about. So he said, "Well, instead of taking it back to the yard and drop it, I'm going to drop it right here in Portsmouth, Virginia, right outside the port. It'll be fine. They got port police." Goes back in the port, get his other container, and he thinks he's just kind of gonna, rectify his being late. And the
Yeah.
next thing you know, that container is gone when he comes out. So $500,000 worth of tobacco that just got imported on a rented UIA chassis that belonged to Merce. So we don't know when that's going to come back. So you're going to have to pay by the day after your free time runs out. Then the chassis that was rented.
Yeah.
So I think after we lost that customer, we lost that load, had the cargo claim, and then bought a container and a chassis that we never found again. We were probably $600,000 in. I mean, with loss of customer and everything.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's catastrophic. Just one event.
I mean, the story I gave, that was a much smaller number. It was huge to me at the time, but that is something to consider, right? Because we've talked about it before. This industry, you can make good money, but
Yeah.
you can spend a lot of money too. I mean, we're we're talking not just in equipment, but what you're hauling and every. I mean, yeah, something happens there. There's a lot of money on the line with so much of this. It kind of makes me think. Are you aware, like, what is a good hiring practice to find somebody appropriate? Because I know from my personal experience, I see all the time, and in trucking Facebook groups and stuff. Hey, looking for drivers, and it just seems, very blind. All right, yeah, pick up your truck, let's go. And it just reminds me of what I went through, and I'm just like, eesh, makes me cringe a bit. From your
Well,
recommendation, where would you start? Like, how do you get started with somebody you can trust?
I looked at one yesterday on Facebook Marketplace here in Virginia. It's like log truck driver, and he's got a picture of an old R model Mac, and I mean, this thing is like ragged out. So you already know his maintenance is probably in the toilet, and then he's just going to hire anybody that's got a license. So, and
Yeah,
he's probably got progressive. So it's just a bad deal in a lot of the smaller fleets because they just don't know any better. They don't understand the overall big picture risk of this thing. But the way that I kind of outline it is I don't tell everybody to get a system. Like some people, hey, you need 10 Street. I'm not going to come to you and say, if you got 2 trucks, you need a 10 Street and a motive and
yeah,
Fleetio and all this other stuff. Like you don't need a fleet tech stack with 2 drivers, right? Like get yourself some manila folders, a whiteboard, and track it in Google Docs. I mean, that's all you need. But if we're talking like something where you really have to start managing it at scale, at least get yourself something inexpensive to where you're actually able to map out a workflow. And I like to start with barriers first. So when I say barriers, the first thing we're talking CDL in general is a clearinghouse. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of money on a drug test and a criminal background check and all these things first if you can't come back not prohibited in the clearinghouse. So I start with the cheapest barrier first. $1.50, I can find out if you're even worthy of the rest of my time for MVR, drug test, and all that. I mean, if you can get past that, then I move on to the MVR, the next cheapest thing. Then I look at your MVR. If you, after $20 spend, I say, hey, this is a reasonable thing. I've talked to him. His license worked out. He's qualified. He doesn't have restrictions. Hopefully he doesn't have a manual restriction. He's got the experience. We're good. So let's move on through the process and drug testing, etc. One
right,
part that I think a lot of people actually rule out of their hiring process is the road test. A lot of people use that CDL in lieu of, and they say, hey, the regs say, as long as he has a CDL, I don't have to do a road test. We always tell people to do a road test. I mean, a 10-minute road test with open-ended questions, just talking to the guy, you can find out a lot of things. And maybe you don't find out necessarily what you want, but you might get a red flag in that conversation that says, tell me a little bit more about that. What did you just say? And the next thing you know, you find out that he's that guy who dropped a trailer of tobacco outside the port. And it's never been reported anywhere, and you can't find anything on it. He just happened to open up and talk about whatever. So I think open-ended questions, conversations, anytime you can have one, whether it's through a road test or an interview process, asking the right questions. But more than asking the right questions, really listening to what they say when they're talking to you, and then making sure you have a logical workflow in that qualification process.
yeah. Yeah, you bring up some really great points there, especially about the CDL aspect, right? Like, I can see the thinking there, right? Well, hey, they've passed the test, they're good to go, right? But I can tell you one thing, and I probably shouldn't name drop at this point, but when I used to work for a trucking carrier during the hiring process, they had us not hiring after I got on, they had us go through and sit with all the different departments. I'm sitting with the recruiting department one day for about half a day, and I can't tell you how many of the phone calls were guys with CDL. I mean, they were fresh out of CDL school, but their main concern was, you train, right? Because I am not comfortable to go on the road by myself. And this is a company like, no, you're going out, right? Like that's the whole deal here. You're already been trained, so we need to know if you're ready. And they're like, I need training. And these are guys all with CDL. So I mean, you got to take that into consideration, that just because they got the card in hand doesn't mean they're all trained exactly the same.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're going to be good forever either, right? I mean, just because you've got a guy that's qualified now, it doesn't mean that he's not going to say, "Hey, I don't like working for Rob Carpenter. I'm going to go apply at USA Trucking." You don't know that he's done this. And the
Yeah.
next thing you know, you get a notice from the clearinghouse, and it's like, "Hey, there's new information in this person's clearinghouse profile." You ask for consent, you get another he gives it, and then you go in there and find out he's now prohibited in the clearinghouse for failing a pre-employment test at USA Trucking. Or maybe you're doing continuous license monitoring, which is another big thing that people just don't do because they don't have to. Maybe his license has been suspended from, Virginia Department of Social Services or HHS, and he
Oh,
no
yeah.
longer has a license at all. So you've got the qualification piece on the front end that helps mitigate that regulatory litigation exposure and then reputation exposure. But then you've got to manage that long term. I mean, and a lot of people fail at that.
Right, right. Now, I know in your post when you wrote about this, you'd mentioned what is it? PSP checks, the pre-employment
Yeah.
screening. Is that involved with the clearinghouse or is that separate?
No, it's separate. So usually I knock out that clearinghouse first, and if you can come back not prohibited, then I'm good with that. And then the next step, usually I roll into MVRs and PSPs. And one of the things where people get really lost with MVRs and PSPs is one, most of them have never heard of PSP. So that's FMCSA's program that's not required. You can use it if you want to, or not use it if you don't want to. But it's pre-employment screening program, and it's $10 a person. If you're a driver like me and you've got a CDL, you can order your own and actually see what's on it and
Oh,
see what it looks like before anybody else does. Um, and the good thing about that is when I left truck driving full time, my MVR in Virginia was a +5. It was perfect. There was nothing on there, no accidents, no tickets, nothing. Anybody would have hired me if they did it by MVR only. But
yeah,
if you pull PSP, you start seeing 6 pages of 14-hour violations, 70-hour violations, falsification of logs, bad tires, bad lights, all those things that you got a violation for, but that wasn't a true traffic moving violation
gotcha.
or a crash. So this stuff isn't showing up on an MVR. So with an MVR, a lot of times you're only getting maybe 25% of the person's history in the
Yeah,
big picture. So that PSP really gives you the broader how prone is this person to performing under the regulations? And if they got a 6-page PSP like I did when I left, the odds of them breaking your policy if they're already breaking Fed regs is probably pretty good. So that's
sure.
kind of that flag that says, hey, what's up with this 6-pager? Like, did you just run for a terrible carrier or is this really you? I mean,
Yeah.
it can be both.
Well, and I'd like to get your perspective on this because I will say it seems like the trucking industry is really targeted, obviously by highway patrol, everything else. Like they're going to nail you, right? So
Yeah.
with that in mind, you're saying you left with a perfect record over here, but you pull up this report and you've got 6 pages on it. Now, if you take that into an average person, like what stuff that would show on there is really worth considering, and what stuff is like, well, that's kind of expected.
On an MVR or PSP or both?
I guess more on the PSP because you're just saying that that's the one that kind of goes in depth and lists a little bit of everything.
So on PSP, you're gonna see anything that they've ever had an issue with. Anytime they've ever had a roadside inspection and they've come back with a violation, you're gonna see it on there.
Yeah.
So there's things that I kind of look at it the same way the FMCSA looks at it. They look at it by time and they look at it by the different weights. And usually, if you see things that are really insane, like jumping out of service, which is a 10-pointer, or insanity pieces like that, those I've got a little bit of an issue with more than anything else. Hours of service can be bad because it's double weighted.
Yeah.
So that carries more weight. Even if it's not a 10-pointer, it might end up being a 20-pointer because maybe it's a 10-pointer on a regular hours of service, but then double weight counts as 20. So,
Oh, okay.
I mean, you don't want that. I mean, that's an issue. But there's things that you can look at a PSP and say, hey, this guy's got historically a pre-trip inspection problem. He's not been doing his pre-trips. Maybe it's a knowledge issue. So let's ask him about it. So maybe it's one of those things where I'll bring you on, but just understand we're going to do some talk, some basically some training and some talks on pre-trip inspections because
Yeah.
here we do pre-trip inspections. So part of it is you can look at these things and kind of narrow down like what were his issues. Was it a systemic issue like axles are always out of alignment, something you're not going to see as a driver, or is it really something that's driver focused like tires, wheels, rims, lights, things that a driver should have seen? And then you can kind of hope to train out of that based on the conversation you have after you discover it. But that's one of those subjective things that you have to figure out whether you want to work past. It's
Yeah.
also one of those things you have to figure out, is this person coachable enough to actually take my guidance and actually change the behavior? Because if you don't think that's the case, he's going to keep doing it.
Yeah. So we've worked through some of like the trust and screening aspect. We've worked through some of the, I guess screening, but background aspect there. I'm kind of thinking money too, right? Like you've branched out, you're this owner operator. Now you're saying, okay, let's grow this business. I want to be a fleet owner. And you're putting that trust in people, but what's it going to cost you? So bringing on people And obviously, you said, the PSP is not required, but it is there with additional information. Insurance companies, when you're growing your fleet, like what are they going to be looking at that's going to affect what you're paying at the end of the day?
So I mean, the driver is not going to affect how much you pay necessarily up front, because they'll look at the PSP, they'll look at the MVR, they'll say, hey, he's fine. We'll let you add him to the policy if
Mhm.
you're one of those companies that needs insurance approval before they come on, and most of the small fleets have that.
Yeah.
So once they come on, then at the end of your policy period, and you go for marketing to actually try to get insurance again, say your company doesn't want to renew you and you've got to go to market for insurance. I mean, one of the things that's going to come up is when they try to market you, these underwriters are going to say, well, what's his driver criteria? Like, can you provide us a copy of his written driver criteria of how he decides who he's going to hire? Um, and then they were going to pull records and say, well, why has he got this guy working here? He doesn't meet the criteria. So a lot of times it's really when you come up for renewal that they see the holes in your program or the holes in your hire. And that's when they say, hey, we can't insure this guy. And we've
Right.
had that happen where we had a fleet with 600 drivers, I don't know, 2 years ago. And they closed one company and moved everybody to another company, and they had to get new insurance. But the new
Yeah.
insurance wouldn't cover half the drivers that they had working at the old company. So, you got to start
That
over.
makes a difference.
It makes a big difference.
Man, that's some fantastic insight. I really, really appreciate you diving into that, man. We'd be amiss though if I didn't tap into you a little bit more. We were talking when we came in here about, last time we talked, 1,000 different policies. So much has changed in this industry. An industry that, kind of tends to be slow sometimes has really been moving pretty dang fast these days. What's your feel? What's your take on the industry today? What's the hot stuff that's really been catching your eye? And kind of where do you think we're going from here?
Man, I don't know if you were to listen to Craig Fuller back in before Trump took over, like we were going to like skyrocket, and then it never happened. And I think I'm not blaming Craig Fuller, but it's just one of those things. Like I think you think sometimes the market will perform better than it's going to, and then it just doesn't. But that's trucking, right? I mean, like that's always been trucking. Like you've got ebbs and flows, and I mean,
100%.
they'll come out of it. I mean, there's no question about that. It's just when will you come out of it? And maybe when interest rates fall, it'll get a little bit better. But I think one of the things that kind of has haunted the industry for me is the difference in driver personas. Like you have a different driver now, and it's changed everything. I mean, it's changed in terms of your reputation and the ability to salvage a reputation and to maintain a reputation. Your insurance, which is going up double percentage points every single year, 48% since I don't know 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's not just me or somebody else. That's all carriers. And the reason is insurance companies are taking catastrophic loss on highway accident litigation because bad drivers are in trucks and bad fleets are allowing them to be in trucks. And when that happens, somebody has to pay for it. The insurance company is not just going to eat billions of dollars in nuclear verdicts. They're going to increase the premiums, and somebody's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think that driver persona change from the old school brotherhood, CB toting, manual shifting truck driver with a tucked in shirt, boots, and a buckle. You don't have that anymore. Yeah, well, not you do, but it's not as much as we used to. I mean, that was commonplace. Now it's very different. I mean, we had that a good example that I talked about this week a couple times was we had that tanker that got stolen, hijacked in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like
saw that.
if that truck didn't have an automatic in it and you had to shift, the man might have got the truck, but he's not going to get over 15 miles an hour, right? I mean, he's done. But in that truck, it's just hit the D, and as long as you can push the pedal, you're going to go. So it's it's just a different world. I mean, you can blame manual transmissions, you can blame fleets hiring drivers, but I can't tell you where it all started. I can just tell you it's just not what it was.
100%. I mean, you're right, man. So much has changed. Talking about the market, especially, big thing that I've been noticing is like, as you mentioned, trucking ebbs and flows. We see the seasonality every year, and we know the market changes from period to period on top of that. But I feel like within the last couple years, everything in the nation is so volatile at the same time. I mean, every industry, every price point on everything that you touch, and that all, comes back to this industry, right? So it's like, what do you think, that what are the implications that might have long term on what we know to be the ebbs and flows of the industry? Like, do you see that changing at all with all the different price points and everything, or do you think we're still going to kind of carry on the same?
I mean, I think if you were going to see it, you should have already seen it because I mean, prices have been increasing for consumer goods for a
Yeah.
while because of primarily because of inflation. But you didn't see rates go up with that. I mean, that was cost of goods, not cost of transportation on the rise. It was just the market. So I don't think that's going to change it. I do think inflation will help if they bring down inflation and the Fed actually lowers and the interest rate. Then I think some things will change. But I think overall you need a complete kind of like reboot, and I don't think you're going to get that until some financial things change. I mean, even this week I went to Costco, and I mean, there's things you buy all year, every year for years,
Mhm.
and I looked at it and it's like last month it went up $1. This month it went up another dollar. I'm like, I mean, we're not getting any more money in the truck. So where's the I mean, and interest
Right.
rates have actually come down some. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere. Easy one for me to always point out, and I'll probably get sued for mentioning this, but McDonald's, right? And it's tough for me because we got so used to their dollar menu back in the day. Now it's like what used to be $4 and change is pushing like $12, and you're like, I ain't paying $12 for that. That's insane. But
Yeah.
you see it literally everywhere, but then, it does affect how much people can buy and so forth, but still producing. So I don't know. It's interesting to see how that all is going to play out.
It's funny to watch. I mean, I've always done like a lot of research in terms of like old newspapers and stuff. And if you ever get into like newspapers, you can
Oh,
look at the old advertisements of what meat cost and bread cost, and you could get a kit to build a house mailed to you, and you could build like a
yeah.
2-story freaking Sears home for like
Sears catalog.
18,000.
Yeah.
And you see these things, and it's like that wasn't really that long ago, and here we are, and like my house was like $600,000, but that would have been like 200 grand, like just 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, obviously the world's going to progress and cost of things are going to get expensive. Now I don't mess around with. I'm going to the Auto Haulers Association not next week, but the following week. And one thing that I have seen skyrocket is automobiles, like even trucks. I
Oh yeah.
mean, you used to get like a '98 Peterbilt 379. You could get one for like 25 grand. I mean, as recent as 10, 12 years ago. Now, if you have a '98 Peterbilt 379, I mean, they're like 50, 70, $90,000 online and they're not in the best shape.
Yeah.
So everything's crazy.
Well, and I'll get your perspective on this. Even the brand new trucks, like and we're talking about, houses and stuff and how much, the prices have changed on that. And I think there's, room there to debate that, like, we've made them so cheap, and yeah, they look a lot nicer, but they're built like paper mache today at the same point when you compare them to one of these old houses that ain't going nowhere. And I think that I personally see, like, there's a lot of comparison with the trucks like that too. Like, there's these old trucks that were built to last, and these new ones. I mean, the carrier I worked for, we'd see brand new trucks rolling off the lot, all digital dash and everything. Within a week, they're sending half of them back because they just having so many issues. Do you see that, like the quality going down as well?
Oh, dude, it's terrible. Like my Cummins, let's just say my truck. Like it's like the bane of my existence right now. And I mean, this is only a year old. It's a
Yeah.
Cummins Ram, and I don't have any problem saying it's a Cummins Ram. I got it because of the Cummins, not because of the Ram. And we're less than 50,000 miles on that truck, and it's already had a full emission system replacement.
Yeah.
So it's like you buy the truck for the Cummins, it's going to last. It could last you 1,000,000 miles if you take care of it, but it won't last 1,000,000. It won't last 50,000 miles because the emissions have destroyed it. So
Right.
um, I'm kind of peaked on that one. But commercial trucks aren't different in so much, right? It's like they still have their issues with emissions, but there's other things like the more electronics, the more prone they are to failure. And
Yeah.
I think some of the good parts about it is like when I drive these brand new trucks, like from the factory, they'll call and say, "Hey, we've got one that you should come and drive," and I'll go drive it, and it's like this is not a bad truck, right? But then you're coming up on a light, and it's I mean it's full of electronics. It's got auto braking and all the safety features that some of us like, some of us don't want. But in this instance, I was coming up on a light. I could see a car as a human. I could see this car ahead, 300 feet, 400 feet. I
Yeah.
knew that that car was in. It was turning. It was in the process of making the right hand turn. It had its blinker on. I knew what it was doing. I could, from a human element, perceive that. So I didn't let off the accelerator. I didn't touch the brake because I knew that by the time I got to that light, that car was going to have long made its turn.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, the whole truck, I mean, immediately locks up. I mean, locks up, smoke everywhere, and the auto braking just didn't have the human element that said, "Hey, there's a car here, and it's still there." Well, it just didn't have the piece in its brain that said, "Hey, this car
Yeah.
doesn't have moved." So I think some of the electronics are bad, but those parts are prone to failure, right? So like you're gonna have to replace them. You're gonna have to get them fixed. It's like a lot of people went to automatic windows. I didn't go to automatic windows till 5 years ago. It was roll up windows because you know what? It's not going to break unless I have to
Right.
replace the knob.
Yeah.
So I think the more electronics, the more expense, not just on the front end, but on the recurring end. So half of it I've looked at like this is a racket.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I've seen so many posts, over the last year or two around that same thing, especially the braking aspect, the auto braking. I've seen it in both instances that not kicking on in time, or one guy was saying like it just randomly happens to him. There's like not another car on the road, and all of a sudden it just wants to lock up for no reason because something's detecting something that's not there. But yeah, there's a lot there to consider, and it's I don't know. I think it'll be funny to see in 15 years, as much as computer and electronics are all getting into it. The boys down at the way station are gonna have to become damn programmers to run their checks now.
That's it. Well, I mean, they are going to those, they have put in at the scales the AI systems where the roll through, where you're rolling through, and the AI is actually detecting whether you have any defects or violations in your truck as you're rolling
Is
onto the
that
road.
right? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the kind of like the height of your wheels, and as you roll through, it's the model is trained to pick up on defects like are your lug nuts there, are there cracks in the wheels, are the tires
Okay.
bald, what's the depth of the tire, and then you get up to the scale thinking like, am I competing on like, am I heavy or not? And it's like, oh, you were missing a lug nut on the back right wheel. And it's like, oh, pull into the scale. So it's getting there. I mean, before you know it, we might not have any enforcement people. It might all be like AI enforcement people. So
You gotta pull up and you got someone on a screen from, India or whatever.
yeah, one of those AI avatars is like, welcome,
Okay.
driver.
Now serving number 32. That makes a lot of sense. We've got a scale between the office on my way home, and I noticed they were swapping it out, and there was way more cameras than there used to be. But I wasn't processing that it might be for some kind of system like that. I was just like, damn, how many cameras you need up there? But I mean, that's kind of cool at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about it is it's objective, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I think if I've ever had a problem at a scale, usually I don't really have a lot of problems. Like, if I get pulled over, as long as I'm legal and I've done what I'm supposed to do, I've never had a problem. Like, and I'm courteous. That's usually kind of how like you
Goes
set
a long
the
way.
tone, and it can either go one way or the other. But one of the good things about it is the only time that I've ever seen some of the drivers that I've worked with or that I've had working for me have real issues is one, they're not courteous, or two, they get a subjective officer. They look at something and it's totally wrong, and then you end up spending 30 minutes data queuing it
Yeah.
or data queuing the whole sheet because something didn't right or they didn't understand or the driver didn't communicate right. We've had that happen. But the good thing about these camera systems that are checking the trucks is it's 100% objective. I mean, when it looks at it, it either is or it isn't. It's not
Right.
one of those, well, I feel like maybe you can't speak English.
Yep.
So
No, that's a good point there, man. Well, hey, man, we've had a hell of a conversation today. I've enjoyed every bit of it. If you don't mind, I'm going to twist your arm a little bit because I really enjoyed our first conversation. It's been far too long, and I really enjoyed today's conversation. So, what else is on your mind that's pinging for you in the trucking industry? And then I'm gonna ask if we can get you back on for another episode around that.
Oh yeah, we can always get back on as long as I'm in town. You don't want me to do a call from the cell phone in the seat, but
We can make it happen.
yeah, yeah, it won't look or sound as good. Like my hair won't be, well, I don't have any hair anyway, but no, I think the big thing with the industry that's kind of harping on me now is like when will it recover? Because I mean,
Mm,
there's a point of bleeding that you're having good drivers that we already had lost enough of that are leaving the industry because of the situation that the industry is in right now.
yeah.
How long will that happen before finally everybody is just like, I'm done? And you kind of have to have trucks to keep everything running. Now we've got AV clients. I mean, we've got a lot of them, some of the biggest ones. And they're running completely driverless trucks from say Dallas to New Mexico, 100%
Okay.
driver. It's dock bump freight. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon because they don't have a replacement for the guy that can throw chains and figure out what grade chain he needs and what grade binder he needs or tarp versus webbing or any of that. So I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But I think what is changing is we already had a big persona of driver, a change in driver persona. And I think it'll get worse the more people that leave the industry. So I think that's been a big issue. One of
Yeah.
the good things is we do have an administrator coming in. I think he's actually supposed to start on the 22nd. Whether he's confirmed or not, he's supposed to start work on the 22nd is what I've
Okay.
been. So that'll be good. And I think if you can keep I think he's a good enough pick at administrator to where if the new if say we get, I don't know, Gavin Newsom or something crazy. If we get an administration change, maybe he'll hang in there and we can have an administrator with some leadership for a while to where you can actually keep it lined out. But the trucking industry is in a mess, not just because the market's in a mess, but it's been rudderless for a long time. So when you go through, I don't even know how many it is now, probably 8 administrators or 10 administrators in like 6 years, 7 years. Leadership changes mess
Yeah.
things up. So one of the good things about right now is we don't have a president that loves regulation. So there are regulations that have come down, like the registry change, but that really changed 10 years ago. So we're just implementing that now. Clearinghouse 2 came out, but that's a year or so old. And then they've got some proposals out now for hair testing that they've actually set some firm dates on. That was this week. And then they've got a proposal to add fentanyl to driver CDL test panels. So that went out this week. So there are some regulations in the pipeline, both that have already passed and that need to be implemented, and then some that are in the rulemaking stage. So it's constantly changing. I think it's realistically heading in the right direction. I just wish
Yeah.
it would head in the right direction faster.
100%. And there's, always bumps in the road to make it interesting along the way as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome, man. I think that's gonna gear up to an excellent next conversation. So I'm gonna get with you after this. We're gonna ping and see when we can get back on, check your schedule and all, and we'll do this again.
We'll do it.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for letting us take a little bit of time out of your busy schedule and pick that brain of yours. Really, really appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, everyone out there watching, thanks so much. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go check out Rob. And until next time, stay safe out there. Have a great day.